Well, come on in. Come on. Don't be scared. And yes, you are in the principal's office. We've got 30 minutes to get to the bottom of the issue. And the issue is always education. The issue is always education and how it affects our most vulnerable population, Black children, Black adults, differently than most. And we will have 30 minutes to get to the heart of the issue. Our conversation will always be honest and solution focused. And this is where our guests get a chance to come and explain themselves and their views around the issue of the day. So come on in and take a seat. I'm Michelle Penix, or Principal Penix to most, and we are glad to have you on the show today. On today's show, we'll examine a topic that we've been looking at for the past several weeks through the eyes of our children and our young adults in the community. But today we'll take a little bit of a detour as we welcome our guest, and her topic today is around adult education. What that means for the adults in our community, the people that we live and reside by in our everyday walk. And so I'm excited that we get to welcome to the show an adult education specialist, Miss Janice Baldwin Gutter. Please welcome Janice to the show. Welcome, Janice. We're glad you're here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm excited.
Excellent. So let's just jump right in with a couple of questions about background. How and why adult education? How did you come to be interested in working in this field?
I taught full-time, part-time really, at the University of Louisville as an adjunct at night, and I worked full-time during the day at a major chemical company. So I loved working with adults. Also at the chemical company, I was corporate trainer. So my history has been traditionally with adults. After working at U of L for 18 years as an adjunct at night, I decided let's try to do something different, let's do something flexible. And so I Googled online universities, and this was 2006. And a university came up, and they called me 2 months later, and the rest is history. I started at Kaplan University, and then I am now at Purdue University Global, which is a division of Purdue University.
Excellent. Okay, so let's kind of focus in on that for a second. One, I want to talk about the experience of working with adults and what we come in the education community to know as a growth mindset, that no mindset is fixed and that we are all lifelong learners if we choose to be. So do you find that there's ever resistance on the part of adults in continuing their own growth, or do they kind of come into it naturally?
There's resistance. One of the things that we learn as instructors is that adults will come to the learning environment with their own experience, which is different than a child. It's called andragogy versus pedagogy. And so as the instructor, you have to embrace that experience and build a curriculum that allows the adult to bring that experience into the classroom, but not control the classroom, because you have certain objectives that you must accomplish. So it can be worked out. The adult learner is different, but it can be monitored, and they are welcome to bring that experience in.
I think it's so interesting that you talked about the difference between andragogy and pedagogy. Mm-hmm. And one of the thoughts around that very often in the young people or kid-centered world is that those skills don't transfer to adults. But very often the ways that kids like to be taught, adults do as well, but just not talked to in the same manner that kids like. So you also mentioned the online world, and what was that experience like? Did you receive your own personal degrees through online college, or was this something that you just came to invest time and energy in?
It was a mix. Back in the time when I went to college, there wasn't any online. You went to class, you went on campus. Right. But online started to develop at University of Louisville. I went back for another master's, and they had started developing online programs there. So I did take some classes there. This was back in 2003, and they started their online program. From that point on, I began to develop and help write curriculum for online, on my own and with them. So it was an evolving process. Online learning has gained new respect There is a group called Quality Matters that you have to have certain things built into the online program in order to be accredited. So there are discussion boards, there are homework assignments. I do seminars once a week, live seminars once a week. So the quality and the credibility has really awakened, not only since the pandemic, but ongoing at all times. And now online is accepted. Many adults do not know about online. It is not social media. You know, you do not post and run because you have things that you have to get done through the week. But it's wonderful, it's flexible, and with everything going on here now, with the pandemic and everything like that, this is a perfect time for adults to also go back with their children.
Well, thank you for your honesty around how online learning has changed, and how, especially coming into the pandemic, a lot more eyes are open to the benefits of online learning. I'd imagine there are also some fallbacks. As a online instructor, what are those fallbacks to online learning?
Well, I have to make sure that I'm still treating an adult as an adult, but I also have to make sure that I am reminding them that this is an online program, and help them guide their way. You know, this isn't something that you can do when you want to, because you're paying money, you know, and you need to get your money's worth, but I need you to come to the table also with time, getting your assignments done, getting them done on time, turning them in on time, and reading your feedback. So that you won't make the same mistakes every week.
Right. I'd imagine that would be an issue that people can think that, as you mentioned about social media, post and leave, but it's important that they get that feedback so they can continue to grow.
Right. So it's a little different, but it's so flexible, and I hold you accountable. You have to also write APA, American Psychological Association, properly, and I work with them, but I need you to come to the table as an adult ready to work with me.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so then let's jump into the reason that we felt like this was such a crucial time to bring it in the midst of this pandemic. A lot of people sitting at home, maybe they were sitting at home before the pandemic, deciding what to do, what their next career move needs to be. And we know that because of the pandemic, there has never been a better time to do something different, to start something, to get involved, to do something that you've really wanted to do. And so adult education is one vehicle that you can take to that path. So just talk to us a little bit about some of the opportunities that are available to community members to take advantage of.
Well, even in a pandemic, there's a silver lining. You know, God brings you into an awareness of some things. Right now, there are so many free opportunities. Free or low cost.
Free.
Are low cost opportunities for adults to take classes online. The city of Louisville has many free low cost opportunities. If you go to the City of Louisville website, you'll see online learning or lifelong learning. There's a site there. Put in City of Louisville /lifelong learning. Okay. And there are vendors that the city has contracted with for coding and just about everything that you can sign up for, and the classes are free because the city has contracted with them. There's also something called lynda.com, which has been on the horizon for about almost 10 years. People don't know about it. It's at the Louisville Free Public Library. You get a library card, you go there, sign up, and then when you go to the site, it's called lynda.com.
L-I-N-D-A?
L-Y-N-D-A. And it's a big yellow button, and you click on it, put in your library card number, and any kind of class, whether it's basket weaving, hobby, on up to any technology, is there. You go there, you sign up for the class. It's a video, and it's flexible. You do it on your own time, and when you finish, you get a certificate. Take that certificate to work and ask that it be put in your personnel file. It is credible. It's there. Also, there are many other opportunities. With the Kentucky Career Center has fantastic program. People think that the unemployment office, that's the only place you go to get a check, but there's much more at the unemployment office than just a check. They have free training and free online, and right now there's a Kentucky Manufacturing Career Center. I've been telling people about that for years. If you are interested in going into manufacturing or anything, that is the place to go. Get your certificate, and many of the major companies here, like GE, Ford, hire the people before they get out of class.
Wow. And that's an important point because, you know, I will tell you that online learning, while it has been around for over a decade now, it's still, I think, fresh and new. Now, the pandemic has brought it to light, as you mentioned, and awakened a lot of people, but talk about the transfer of those skills to the job market. So I get the certificate. What if I am not currently employed? As you mentioned, put it in your personnel file, but what if I'm not currently employed? What do I do with this certificate? Is there help through these programs as well in transferring that to a job? You also mentioned sometimes jobs come to you as a result of you being in the program, but how does that transfer?
When they see that you've been somewhere through training, and when you're filling out an application, you know, you have to put what is your background. If you put some of these certificates there, and not everybody is going to be ready for full college.
Right.
You know, there are certificates, there's academic training, and there's vocational training. If you go there, get this vocational, academic, or certificate, and an employer sees this online, your chances of getting the job may be a little higher than someone who doesn't have anything. It's a rationing process. It doesn't mean that necessarily you're smarter, but it's a rationing process. Those who have it get, and those who don't have that gateway don't. But many of these programs, are the ones I just mentioned and some others, are low cost or free. And also there is another scholarship for those 65 and older. It's called the Donovan Scholarship. And it is open to any individual that 65 and older, 6 hours free, that you can go back to any Kentucky state school.
Okay.
And get those 6 hours. We are going to be working longer, okay? So do not think 65 is retirement anymore. So that's also an option, and I understand that not many people are taking advantage of that. But I'm going to go back again and try to take advantage of that and look at a doctorate.
Well, that is excellent as you continue to provide an example of that growth mindset that we started the show with, that you are a lifelong learner and its importance to you. Now, one of the things that you mentioned in talking about online and how it's changed, talk to me, what do you think are some of the reasons for these free and low-cost opportunities that are available now? Is this because of the change in the age of the job market, less people in the field? Why do you think that there's been such an onslaught of online opportunities free to the community?
Well, there has been a change in qualifications, and to keep many people qualified, or to get people qualified, and to hold on to the populations in their particular areas. Many of the cities have started these online programs, and Louisville was, I must say, ahead of the game. There's a 55,000 degree program that was started maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I volunteered for them. I haven't heard back from them yet. But, and they're trying to keep a good base of talent here or in the particular city. So it exploded back then. Also technology, even if you're not a technology type person, the technology skills are needed. Manufacturing skills are needed. Administrative skills are needed. So the need for these things has expanded. So there needed to be a way to reach out to get these things. And you can sit at home and sign on at your leisure, as long as you finish the program.
That brings forth a point. Who is online learning not for? Which people do you think need to maybe take a second look?
Well, there's nothing like actually, networking and actually being there. I miss some of my students. Even years later, they'll walk up to me and they'll say, "Oh, Miss Janice, you taught me back at U of L back then." But there are blended learning classes where some classes you meet so many weeks online and then so many weeks offline.
Okay.
Being there. So there's blended learning. You need to have the time. And make sure that you have an area in your home that you can set aside. You need internet access. So there are some things that you need to consider to be successful to get on.
So
and
being a
carry
good
through.
time manager, I'd imagine, is a big piece of that. And do we take for granted, are all online adult education classes in particular usually scheduled? Or are these recorded sessions that you can do when you want, as long as maybe the work assignments are completed on time?
It depends. The ones at, for example, lynda.com, they're there. They're anytime, 24 hours a day. There are some, like the one I teach at Purdue University Global, it's a 10-week term. And you need to do what you need to do with me during that 10 weeks.
Okay.
And every week we have a unit that has to be finished with discussions and live seminars and things like that. So it really depends on the program. Academic programs normally are more stringent. And the vocational programs, I understand now, are also going online. The Kentucky Career Center used to be, because of the pandemic, I think, but you used to have to go in. Now they even have that online.
Wow.
I mean, so there's really no reason for anyone not to be a lifelong learner for some of these free programs. And I'm excited about that, but people, I think, just don't know.
So talk to us about, again, the most vulnerable segment of our Black population here in the city of Louisville or across the United States, those that have been convicted of a crime, have served their time, and are now back in the community. How do they take advantage of these opportunities? Is that even a real possibility for past felons or criminals in the system?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. My background is also HR. So I do a lot of onboarding and bringing in and background checks and employee relations. I do encourage everyone to look at their record and have it expunged, because I saw tears for people that went through an entire program and could not get licensed because they had something in their background, and it broke my heart. So before you sign up for a program of any kind, especially one that requires a license, look at your background and your record and get it expunged.
And then when you speak about, the legwork before actually enrolling in the course, one thing that comes to mind is colleges, some online colleges that have went bankrupt in recent years, been brought to our attention. Now, I'm not sure, but it seems like I remember that being the case maybe here in Louisville with Brown Mackey. I remember that was a big, issue a few years ago. But what can adults do to make sure they don't become a victim of a school that may not be accredited or in good standing?
I'm so glad you brought that up. You have to make sure that the accreditation. There are for-profit schools, and the for-profit isn't totally bad, but make sure that they're accredited. And most people will go to, a state school, which is going to be around a while.
Right.
And my recommendation is that whatever school you go to, check that accreditation, check that program, and get a transcript, printed transcript, every term when you finished. Because if that school is no longer around for whatever reason, you will have something in your hand to say, this is what I've completed.
That makes sense.
And even if you're at an accredited state school, or even a private school, get a copy of your transcript.
So as an average citizen, if I wanted to enroll in an online public education course, adult education course, and you mentioned about making sure they're accredited, how do I do that? Because people are so, timely that, you go in or you make a phone call, I'd like to enroll and I'd like to find out if you're accredited. And many times, oh, sure, we have, how can I verify that?
You can go to the Kentucky Department of Education website and look at some of the accreditations. Now, one accreditation may not be equal to another, okay? So you have to be very careful, and that's where you need to really get someone to help you, with the counseling and the advising, because all of them will tell you, yes, we're accredited. But one accreditation does not equal another. Right.
And speaking of that, as you mentioned, and you're giving me just as many good ideas as you're sharing, we appreciate that. But when you talk about adult education and going back and checking and having someone to counsel or advise you, is counseling and advising a normal part of online education, or is that something that is usually dropped off?
Oh, no. For the students come in, at least where I teach, Purdue University Global, which is associated with Purdue, you are advised, when you come in, and you have to come in with the proper paperwork. So advising should be part of any program, whether it's, online adult education, whether it's regular. So always get an advisor or ask for an advisor. Now, scrutinize that advising, okay, and be very careful about that. But everyone should advise.
Okay. Then let's talk about one of our favorite subjects. How do I afford this? What does adult education cost? We talked about low cost and free opportunities, but if I wanted a 4-year degree or maybe to continue on past that, is it comparable to regular university in person, more or less expensive?
It's changing. It's more expensive. You would think it would be less, but what I've seen personally is that that convenience does cost. Sometimes they do charge a little bit more for the convenience, but it's still worth looking into. But things are changing because of the demand. There may be, what do you call it, an electronic fee for
technology fee.
Technology
yes.
fee, but it's still worth it if you're going through a regular academic program. I also want to say that a lot of the colleges and universities around the country and locally are no longer requiring the entrance exams, because many people don't do well on entrance exams like the GMAT and the GRE and things like that. So many of the universities are getting rid of that as a barrier.
Wow.
I know when I was going to school, I didn't do particularly well on the SAT, but you got me in the classroom and I was fantastic.
Right.
And
Oh, wow.
not bragging, but I was,
Yeah.
I didn't need that barrier to stop me. And so that's another barrier that's being eliminated.
Well, that is right up my alley. If anybody is a regular to the principal's office, you know that one of the reasons we do this show is because we advance the ABCs of educational injustice, a philosophy that I started several years ago, actually, around what educational injustice looks like currently. And that A stands for abolish standardized testing. So when we talk about removing barriers, as Janice has with us today, you know that we're talking about getting rid of anything that prohibits us from being our best selves. And there are so many of you out there who are excellent in the classroom, but when you see that test coming, and sometimes it's not just when you see it coming, sometimes it's how that test is constructed in the first place, can be a huge barrier. So thank you for bringing that up. Talk to me a little bit about your comment that online education is not social media. Now, I know with kids and with NTI, non-traditional instruction that they've been going through, in visiting with some kids and some hubs, I've seen kids who use their Chromebook, and then when the Chromebook goes dead, they'll say, I'll just use my phone and do my assignments. So is that a reality for adult education as well? Is that normal to use your phone to communicate and complete your classwork?
Yes, if they have an app, as a matter of fact, it's one of the advantages. If they have an app or a laptop, an app for the phone, and they're in traffic or they're at work, yes. Most of the colleges and universities with online also allow you to get on via your phone. I get on via my phone to check the mail and also to grade some papers until I get home to save a little time. There is no reason for the adult online learner not to have access to the class.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so you have given us so much information about adult education, about online instruction, about the pros, the cons, the benefits. I'm curious not only about that piece of it that you shared, but you also have another passion, and that passion is caregiving. And your passion around adult education and caregiving, how do those collide?
Well, most of the people know me for caregiving, the Caregiving Workshops. I wrote a book 10 years ago, Caregiving a Daughter's Story, and it's still online now because I didn't want others to go through what I went through trying to care for my mom. My dad's caregiving was much easier because I had other people working with me. My sister and I, Deborah, worked together, and his daughters. But for Mom, I was pretty much on my own, and it was difficult. So I wrote the book, and I do workshops to try and help the average person find resources for their loved one. And you'd be surprised, again, there are so many free resources that people don't know about right here in Kentucky and in your own state. So it's not really so much of a business for me, which drives my husband crazy, but it is a passion to help caregivers find their help for the resources. And like I said, most people know me when they think of me, the caregiving, they don't know about the adult education side.
Right. That is so interesting that you were able to turn that passion into an experience to help adults in that growth mindset and that online but also in-person education. I think you should be commended for that. That's great work. I know when I lost my mom, I wish resources were as readily available as they are now as well. But have that as part of your story, I think is great. Any final thoughts you'd like to give on adult education? Anything that you were hoping that we discussed that maybe we didn't get a chance to?
Well, I want to encourage everyone to diversify your skill set. Don't get comfortable doing one thing or because you've done one thing for the rest of your life, okay? I also did accommodations to help people find other jobs when they could no longer, or they become disabled. Okay, if you diversify your skill set so that maybe you can't do the plumbing anymore, or maybe you can't, do whatever you've been doing for 20 years, develop something on the side, and this is where the online learning could come in, so that if you can no longer do one thing, I can pull your resume and see what else you're qualified for. Because accommodations are based on, not on how long you work someplace or whether someone likes you, but they're based on qualifications. So diversify your skill set, and one way to do that is take some flexible online learning classes. So you will be qualified to do something else. Normally what someone else does, it follows their passion, okay? So if you've done something for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and then when you retire, you'll have something else to do. Diversify your skill set, and do that by taking advantage of these free, low-cost online learning opportunities.
Online learning and opportunity. When you say those words, hopefully Janice Baldwin Gutter will come to your mind, because she's been our guest today for the last 30 minutes on the Principal's Office. We are excited that you were able to join us, where we get to the heart of the matter and things that affect us in the Black community around education. We'll be here every week in the same place at the same time. We invite you to keep coming back as we learn on together on this journey through education in our city and the wonderful opportunities to decrease that wealth gap and increase our knowledge and our skills to take advantage of it. I'm Michelle Penix, your host. It has been my pleasure. I'm glad you're here. Thank you again to Miss Janice for being with us. And as always, to God be the glory.